starting a couple minutes early just to make sure everything is good to go. I will do the official start here in a few minutes. I'm trying to see how I can see my chat. Oh, there we go. Let's get that guy out there. Okay. Hopefully I'm still live. Seem to be still live. My channel. All right, cool. We're still live. Gonna close that. I have chat. Hello. Chat. All right. It's 8 o'clock. It says we're live. I believe them. Check OBS. Yes. I have a chat. Excellent. Hi, Brian. All right. Welcome to Full Circle. First time going live on YouTube. We'll see how this works out. So far, I think I like it better. I've been watching some other videos from Heroes of the Storm, actually, where they streamed on YouTube. So I figured I'd give it a shot, especially after losing video a few times. I'm sort of recording and then going to YouTube with it later, and like 3 times that's been a problem. So great. So here we are. Welcome to episode 15. My name is Chad. I'll be your host as always, and if you need to send me a message, handle is Cheddar Caveman, just like the channel, on pretty much every forum and bit of social media that's out there. Today I'm going to, I didn't have a ton prepared. I kind of wanted to make sure I got the YouTube thing working. I'm pretty excited about that. I went to a tournament this weekend, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Some of you in chat may have been there. Spoilers. And so I'll talk a little bit about that. I'm not gonna go too in depth. I'm gonna try not to go too in depth about that. But we'll talk about that. I'm gonna retouch on the Tharn theme force that was out there. It was a little disappointing that part of the podcast from last time was cut off. So I'm gonna touch on it at least for a moment, and then I also want, if I have time, I'm going to talk about some of maybe a model or two if I have time. One in particular, I kind of have mine, and it sort of goes well with my tournament too, because one of my lists featured them. Great, good to hear. Thank you. Apparently my voice is coming through better, so that's fantastic. Either that or I'm talking louder or my microphone has improved. Who knows? Maybe YouTube is compensating for my inability to actually know what I'm doing. Sounds like a Google thing to do. That'd be great. So to start with, we don't really have any news that I can think of. Scorn Errata drop that is a big deal to Scorn players. A little bit of a deal for Circle players because we'll probably see more Scorn. But I think nothing worth delving too much into. Like, there's no super like Circle is totally hosed because of X, Y, and Z in Scorn. I think they're good, and I think you'll have to play into them, but I don't think there's like a specific Circle problem. We're about 2 weeks away from the command book, so we'll know about Loki, Kaya 3, and our other theme by then. That'll be great. But in the meantime, not a lot of news has happened, which is fine. We've had quite a bit of news in January already. So for the tournament, I went up to Madison for a tournament run by fellow PG Rick Way, who did a fantastic job running the event, as he usually does. Had about 24 people, and they did limit it to 4 rounds. So just real quick, I took it was 2 lists. It did not have Divide and Conquer, although I believe Standards Champions formats do have Divide and Conquer 1, but I don't have the document in front of me. But for this one, it was advertised as no Divide and Conquer, and the painting requirements were waived, although there was some raffles if you did. So what I opted to do was to bring, so on ADR for Circle, we have Tanith the Feral Song, we have Una the Sky Hunter, we have Morvana the Autumn Blade, which is Morvana 1, and we have Mosar the Desert Walker. So Tanith, Una 2, Morvana 1, Mosar 1, I guess. We don't have a 2 yet. And so of those, I opted to kind of go with what I liked and what I felt was the strongest. And I went with Una 2, no one's surprised. And I went with Tanith. And I sort of, seeing that this was D and C 1, I skewed my Tanith list such that it was going to be strong into Una, because that was sort of one of the lists that I expected to see, and I didn't really want to play Una versus Una if I could avoid it. And we'll see how that turns out later. So the Una list, just real quick, is so we sort of went full Griffins here. So I went with Una, a Wilder, 7 Scarsfells, 2 Rotterhorns, 2 Sentry Stones, 2 Blackclads, and a unit of Shifting Stones with the Stonekeeper. I went with the Stonekeeper there because you can use Twister on the stones to give them to trigger their prowl, as well as then make your sort of LOS block better if you need to. So it didn't come up a ton. I think I did it once, but that was sort of the idea there. And then the other list was Tanith with a Wilder, Swamp Gobbers, and 2 Purebloods, 2 Woldwyrds, a Moonhound, a full unit of Reeds with the UA, 3 Warwolves, and 2 Sentry Stones. I think that was it. And again, like I said, the idea with that list was I can sort of play into some of the things that Una might not want to see. I still didn't love my options going into Ostrom Bunny Ranch with these 2, and fortunately that gamble paid off. I didn't actually have to play against it. But if we'd gone to a 5th round, I definitely would have had to have played against it, which I'll talk about when we get there. But I didn't really love my matchup into that. I think if I was really building to play strongly into that, I would have actually had to think through a Mosar list, which maybe I will if this comes up down the road. Right now, that's not really on my agenda, but we'll see. So real quick, just to hammer through the rounds. Round 1, I should actually check because I have their names, but I won't go through the names just in case they don't want it on here. But in round 1, I played against a pretty newer player, I believe, and he was playing Khador, and he had the list he selected was Old Witch. I cannot recall off the top of my head what his second lists are. That's probably going to be a theme. I kind of only remember the game, not so much the list selection. Looking at it, I wasn't too worried about either of his options. I didn't necessarily want to play all my infantry into Old Witch, I know, but so he dropped Old Witch. I dropped Una 2. I believe he went first, and just really gonna keep this game short. He moved. We both sort of moved up pretty aggressively. There is sort of a new trick. He was running the Old Witch in the theme. There's sort of a trick that you can do to put the Old Witch sort of really far forward so that she can feat essentially on your deployment zone with the advance move, and then running with the Scrapjack, and then dropping him off, and then using Unseen Path to get her close and then feeding. I think that I didn't measure it out. I think that would have been a bad idea. He didn't try it though. But what did happen, and this was on, I believe, Recon, and what did end up happening is he moved up, and I moved up, and then he moved up and stood the Old Witch behind his objective, and didn't really put a whole lot of other things between me and her, and he didn't feat. So she was at a little past 12 inches away, but not past 14. But because of the objective there, I was able to get Hunter's Mark on the objective so that I get the distance to charge, and then I could easily get her in melee range when I did that. So I ran one Griffin behind the Old Witch. Una feeded Hand of Fate and Primal on one Griffin. One Griffin ran behind her, ignoring all the free strikes and everything, so that I'd have a flank trigger. Charged the objective, didn't kill it in the charge attack, used the claw. And then I think she had 3 focus, and I think it took 3 attacks to kill her. I'm rolling straight dice on the beak attacks, and dice -1 on the other attacks after Primal at Mat 10. And I had one more Griffin I could have sent in. So he probably should have, if he was going to put her there, he definitely should have feeded. I think, in general, he needed to keep her away from the objective also, because that gives me an easy Hunter's Mark target. And if you give the opportunity to get to your caster, it's not going to be pretty. So that's how that went. Round 2, I got to face off against the other another Una 2 player, another Circle player, but they had Una 2 and Morvana 1. And we're talking, and he was talking quite a bit at the beginning of the game about how it was going to be Una versus Una. I had no intention of that being the case. I looked at his Morvana list just in case he was sort of trying to bluff me into a bad matchup, and I didn't think it was a bad matchup to play Tanith into Morvana 1. Based on his list, it was like a Woldwyrd, and I kind of forget, and a bunch of infantry. I think he had druids and blood trackers. I'm forgetting. But I was pretty sure he was going to play Una. I played Tanith, and I would say I could have played the list better, but I think the list did what it needed to do. I was able to take out, I think, 4 or 5 Griffins. I think it was 4 on Una's feat turn. And I was able to keep stuff around Tanith the whole game. I was able to put pressure on Scenario. And really I put him in a position where he felt like he needed to go for an assassination. And he was sort of looking for a throw, which if it had been able to connect, might have enabled him to get there. I think he maybe gets like a mannequin spray or 2. I only had 1 transfer at the time and admonition. So it's maybe possible. I didn't look actually for where he had to go if he would have triggered admonition. I don't think so. But we sort of checked it, and between the Pureblood and another model, and the objective, he was trying to throw one of my Woldwyrds at me, and it, like, no matter how we did it, it was going to bump a base. So he's really not able to do that. I had already scored some scenario points, and he took too long kind of trying to figure that out. So I win there on clock. I think if that's not how it goes, it's still a pretty close game. I think if he hadn't been as down on clock and we played a little longer, I could have been in some trouble, mostly because I needed to have played a little bit more quickly. It's definitely a list. I don't know if Tanith will be my pair with Una going forward, but whatever the other pair is, or if Una ends up being my Una drop, I'm going to need to just make sure that I could maybe convince somebody here to run it against me locally so that I can get some practice just sort of being able to execute a little faster with that. So anyways, so that goes down as a win on the death clock. Round 3, I faced off against one of the 2 of you in the chat room, and this was probably my best game actually of the day. I was an incursion, which I would say favored Una. Brian tried to do his best to stop an assassination run against me. Sorry, he played Mordekar. Skipping ahead of myself. He played Mordekar. The Void Spirits were, he played them very well. I had trouble. I had to spread out my Sentry Stones quite a bit to get to them. And that because I needed the magic weapons. So the Black Clouds could kind of try to kill him, but it's dicey. And the mannequins can kill them, but I've got to spread out, and that means I don't have them in the middle sort of dealing with his screen and some things like that. So I think he played that pretty well. He did leave me like a slight opening. He kind of eyeballed it, and it looked like he was going to get it, but I had room for one. If I killed one model, I had room for another. I don't know. He might have been able to block it better, and I think actually sort of giving me a little bit of a chance maybe there wasn't the worst idea, because I think in hindsight, and we talked about this after the game, that I probably should have just played for assassination. Yeah. And so I went in for an assassination on my feet turn. I did get a little bit of damage out there, but I didn't get through his transfers. I think I missed an attack in there too. He had with 3 transfers, I probably should have just tried to do attrition and feat and then do more attrition. He hadn't feated yet. He commented that he thought maybe he should have. I think it was probably better that he didn't, the way it played out anyways, because it gave him the next turn. Sort of, I have a defensive feat, he responds with defensive feat is usually a stronger play. Against Una, it's sort of weird though, so I kind of, you also can't risk like, well, is she just going to kill my caster? So you got to sort of play that. And the next turn, he made Fort Mordekar out of every beast and everything that he had, as well as feeding, which creates a pretty awkward scenario for me. And as a result, I sort of took out a few things. He sort of took out a few things. I'm able to eventually, because it's incursion, I'm able to sort of start focusing down on the flags and get him away from them so that I can score on scenario. The attrition was starting maybe to look not great for me. I think we were still pretty even. I think the game ended almost exactly even on points. So as far as that goes, like, I think the game went pretty well there. I think just the positioning that Una allowed me to get helped me sort of make up for misidentifying what I should go for there with the assassination. So in the future, definitely need to make sure that I'm not going for that when it's unnecessary. And I think in this case it was unnecessary. I think I could have easily started taking out some of his beasts, or positioning to do that better. Yeah, Brian's reminding me we ended the game 47 to 48 kill points. So, and I think Brian actually had one more than I did. So so that tells you it was a very close attrition game. But I was able to spread out a little bit better and apply pressure better. So I get there. As my clock was running pretty low, actually. So again, I gotta kind of get more reps there, and I need to not. Another reason why probably the assassination was a bad idea. I have to sort of measure that out more carefully and spend a little bit more time seeing what I could get and what models I need to kill and stuff. And that makes me sort of wonder too if all the Griffins plan isn't the best, or if maybe one unit of infantry in the list isn't a good idea. I may revisit that later. And then so that left 3 people who were X and O at that point, one of which was one of the aforementioned Ostrom players, the PG Infernal Judge tournament organizer extraordinaire Travis Marg. I know I said I wasn't going to say names, but too bad. And my opponent, I don't know if I ever heard his first name, Quimby, who's playing Signar, and myself. So we ended up being paired against each other, and the pair down was Travis, and he won his game in that round. So had we gone to a 5th round, I would have been playing him. We both sort of probably have laughed online at this point about who ducked who. That's fine. But I played against the Signar player. He had Darius and Maddox. His Maddox list was a Storm Noun theme force, and it's Jake Quimby, I'm told. He had a Storm Noun theme force with Maddox, which sort of makes sense with her, and he had Darius double Stormwall. Double Stormwall. He had a Journeyman. Jack was on the Journeyman. Firefly on the Journeyman, and Squire. No, not a Squire. No, he didn't have a Squire actually. But he did have Reinholdt, and he had 2 of the Gunmage Captain Adepts. So those are kind of a problem because they can turn off stealth on my Griffins. So that's sort of rough. We were playing Outlast or Outflank, or 2 circle zones. And he went first, I believe. Yes. No. It doesn't matter. He goes and he moves up, and then I go and I put stuff sort of in the zones where he can't really step in the zone without putting himself in a position where if the storm walls go into the zone, that if I feed, I can't get 3-4 birds on it. I actually forgot about covering fire from the storm walls, which was sort of problematic. And the table actually had some pretty big like obstructions, which the storm walls could fit through, but it was really going to be awkward for him. And I could sort of hide behind him and get cover and stuff. And he did go up. He moves up and doesn't put the storm walls in the zone. He puts 2 of the POW 14 mine things that Darius does, like sort of in front of the storm wall, and uses the 2 stealth removals to basically use the big guns on the storm walls to kill 2 of my griffins, which is not nothing. If he whittles that down too far, with that particular list, I don't really have a lot I can do. And I didn't bring a pureblood, so I can't ignore his buffs. But he doesn't put the storm walls in the zone, and he doesn't put Darius really behind anything. He just sort of eyeballed the distance. And I had my Mirage Griffin sort of centrally located in such a way that I was able to sort of draw a line and dodge going through the covering fire templates to get it there, because of he didn't place it on the train, so I sort of draw a line of sight and then like charge over the obstacle. And Darius was camping 1, 2 Primal Hand of Fate, and it's sort of the same as game 1, and they go down. So we talked a bit after the game. When you have 2 huge bases like that and you have 2 zones like that, even if it seems like it's a bad idea because they're just going to kill them, if you don't do that, then you're really looking at a pretty awkward scenario game. As it was, he was only contesting each zone with a Storm Pod, which was a little bit more contesting than I was. I always get annoyed that those things contest, frankly. So he was able to contest doing that, but I scored 3 points, and even if I didn't get the assassination, it probably would have been worth it just to feat and run so that I had Griffins just surrounding his storm walls at that point, and then stand there with wind wall up, and I don't think he can do anything about it. So definitely talked to him and said, you got to put those things in the zone. I may kill him. I probably do, or at least pretty good odds of it being not bad, and then at least that's a game though. So I win. That puts me at 4-0. I had superior strength of schedule based on my opponents, so I got first place as a result. Travis, as I mentioned, got second, and then my opponent from that game got third place. I don't know. It seems just from playing that while Una's been talked about a lot, it seems like maybe there wasn't a lot of people who played against her yet up there. So shocking, Una's good. I do think Tanith's good. In the chat, mentioned that Tanith Wormwood seems like the best pair. They might be. I have a couple other ideas that I'm going to sit on at least for a little bit, since I haven't tried them at the very least, about what to pair with Una, and what Una list. I've played several different variations on Una, and I'm still not convinced what the ideal list is, and I don't think I've seen any I don't think it's a thing that there's going to be consensus on. So yeah, that was kind of my tournament. I like the list. Okay. I have a ton of fun when I play Tanith. I want to experiment with some other things with her. I think if I was going to play a well-rounded list with Tanith, I would definitely take out at least one pureblood for a feral, or at the very least get a Gorax in the list somewhere. But that takes me to the one model I do want to make sure I talk about. So I know I mentioned that I was going to talk about the Tharn Theme Force, but I think first I'm actually going to talk about the model that I wanted to. And I don't, unfortunately, have a picture for it because they were painted ages ago, and I just never got around to taking any pictures, nor did my wife, the painter. But I want to talk about the Woldwyrd. So just a quick go over the stats. The Woldwyrd is a Circle Light War Beast. It is Speed 7, Strength 6, Mat 3, which doesn't really matter as you'll see. Rat 6, Defense 13, Armor 16. It has no command stat. It is a construct. It has Gunfighter and Pathfinder. It is Fury 2. I believe it has 22 boxes, which are pretty evenly spread. It costs 9 points. It is FAU. Its weapon is called Arcane Strike. It is range 10, rate of fire 3, POW 12, and is damage type magical. And there's also that particular weapon has the special quality Purgation, which is an additional die on attack and damage rolls with that weapon against models with an enemy upkeep or animi on them. In addition, the Woldwyrd has the Animus Arcane Suppression, which is a 2-cost ranged self. While within 10 inches of it, of the spellcaster, when an enemy model casts a spell, the cost is increased by 1, and upkeeps are double, so they also cost an additional 1. It's steady, and it also has Witch Hunter, so when an enemy model declares it is casting a spell while within 10 inches of this model can immediately make a basic attack targeting the enemy spellcaster, and if the spellcaster is destroyed as a result, the spell will not take place. So, I alluded to this during the errata episode, but I wanted to go back through it, and I think this has always been a piece that I've thought, even going back to Mark II, and I know it was played a lot in Mark I, but I did not play in Mark I. But going back to Mark II, where I looked at it and I was like, this thing has to have something, right? If they have upkeeps, it's going to be strong. Arcane Suppression, which is largely unchanged, seems like it should be strong. Speed 7, strong. Range 10 is decent, especially in Circle. But it always felt like it was missing a piece. I remember in Mark II specifically saying, like, it needed to be blessed on its own, or it needed to be maybe +1 rat, or +2 POW, or it needed to be able to shoot more, or like there were just sort of a bunch of things. And then in Mark III, we sort of made our way a little bit along those ways. So the way rate of fire changed, it was no longer that you had to buy those shots. You now just got them. So it used to be a Fury 3 beast. It went to Fury 2, but it got 3 shots all the time, which is pretty huge. That's a pretty great change, but it's still range 10, POW 10, and you're sort of obligated for your opponent to like oblige you with upkeeps. And even then, sort of the things that a lot of times upkeeps would be on, a POW 10 even boosted wasn't quite enough, especially for 9 points in Mark III. It was 5 points in Mark II, for those of you who wondered. And so then the errata rolls around, and I would say this wasn't really a piece that I was like, oh, this is top of my, like, I want to see this buffed with the errata. But I'm really glad that it was. So they changed it to range 10, POW 12. It was always range 10. They changed it to POW 12. And first of all, it fixed one of my issues with it, like, just logically, which is, and we haven't talked about this unit, but the Druid Stoneward and Woldstalkers. The Woldstalkers are like small base versions of this guy who are like wrangled by this druid who's keeping track of them. And those guys are range 10, POW 12. Now obviously they can't boost, they don't have purgation, but like they start at range 10, POW 12, and they're supposed to be like a smaller version of this guy to a degree. And you're sort of like, what? So like sort of from a like logical standpoint, that always bugged me that those like ostensibly were better at shooting, if other than the fact they just weren't war beasts, so they can't boost and stuff. So they fixed that, but realistically, POW 12 now puts you in the range of, I mean, anybody who's played with boostable hand cannons will tell you that they're very good, because POW 12 sort of puts you over the curve for a lot of things. Against some things, you're going to get the purgation shot, so boosting hit, boosting damage. Your speed 7, range 10, so you have a 17-inch threat. Rat 6 is extremely strong. I think we have like 2 war beasts that are Rat 6, and one of them costs 38 points to play. And this one costs 9. So, and they're deceptively powerful. You wouldn't think so, but there's a lot of things where people feel they need to put animi out there, right? So like Circle puts primal on beasts, and you know, often killing that beast isn't the thing you're going for, but when you can possibly do it in one round with one Woldwyrd, you probably go for it. It has Gunfighter, so one big reason it was in that Tanith list was for that very fact. Like, you're not going to jam them up with Griffins, and you're almost at their armor value for shooting. So even without an upkeep, the pouch wall is relevant. And then you start getting into it. It's now in the place where your opponent has to make a decision, right? Is that upkeep worth it? Is that Woldwyrd going to do that much damage to me? But we have access to debuffs, and we have access to Blessed, and we have this guy. So, if you put that out there, do you want to put Arcane Shield on your Stormwall? I think I mathed out if I have a debuff, and I think Rust was the one I was thinking of in that time. If I have Rust combined with Wraithbane for 2 of them, I do like 45 boxes or something on average. Substantial. That's just from 2 9-point beasts. So you're gonna put that upkeep on him? I don't know. I mean, if you don't, am I still gonna? You know what I mean? It sort of puts me in a very strong position. The Animus hasn't come up yet in play, or really even in theory, but there's gonna be times where it's a huge deal, right? At speed 7, I can get that. You can charge 10, fail your charge, and be in a really awkward position for your opponent. It's steady, which is great. It's, I just mentioned, speed 7 gives it a pretty respectable threat range. It's still going to suffer a little bit from what I would say one of Circle's problems is right now, which is that we have good threat ranges, but we don't always have, they're not always good in the sense that, like, in Legion and Legion and Signar, their threat ranges are with high-powered guns a lot of times. Which they don't have to really put themselves in threatening positions without your opponent trying to really dig into them. Circle has, so like 17-inch threat range is not that different than something, so like a Defender is speed 5 with a 16-inch gun. So that's actually, right, 16? I think so. So that's 21. So that's a bad example, actually. But there are plenty of other things that are like speed 5, range 12, which are tying it for threat range, but they end farther back. So you do have to really work on positioning and stuff with them still, keeping them safe. But 13-16 is not a bad style. Only 22 boxes is pretty standard light. Steady is great, though. It helps that defense 13 be strong. And like I said, I think any sort of debuffs is going to help them out quite a bit. I know I've seen people talking about playing them with Una. I've played them with Tanith and liked them. You could play them with Wormwood. I've heard a lot of people talking about doing that. I think you could realistically put them kind of anywhere. Baldur seems fine. I wouldn't really put them with like Kyre 2 or Chromac 2. It's not really going to fit there, but you might want to do it with Krugers. You may Bradigus could be an interesting place with his feet. You're going to get that. So I just mentioned how they're sort of sitting out there, but you can feet forward and they're going to threaten 22 inches with those shots and then be back 5 more inches from what they normally would be as they threaten that. That could be interesting. Could be something there. I may try that at one point. They do have a harder time triggering synergy because gunfighter shots are still ranged attacks. So even though you can make them, they still count as ranged attacks. I did mention the mat was not really important, but that said, they are still war beasts, and they can still do power attacks that they're eligible for. So no open hands, but they can still headbutt, they can still slam, and they can't trample because they're medium bases. So they can do those two, which could come up if you have a situation where you need a speedy little slam bot. You might find a corner case for it, but being mat 3, you're definitely using all your boosting to get it to happen. So you're definitely taking for the guns and for the disruption they can cause. Witch Hunter's not going to come up a whole lot from what I have seen, but when it does, I think it's going to be a big deal. If you need a list that you're comfortable playing into, say, Ron, I would say 1 to 3 of these guys are probably going to be your friend. Battle Mittens are not easy to hit for it because of their the rule I can't think of right now. Force barrier. But nonetheless, they will, you're going to think twice before you're doing it, because even, I'm only needing, I think 9. It's either 8s or 9s, but I'm going to, unless you're able to kill it, or to kill both of them, you're probably going to lose some mittens, and that may throw off your ability to actually do what it was you needed to do, especially since the spell no longer goes off with it. So if you are a Circle player and you don't have Woldwyrds because you didn't play in Mark 1 or you didn't buy everything like me, because I'm a crazy person, I would definitely be looking at getting a couple of them. I think there's a threshold. Some people are like, oh my god, this thing's going to be spammed. I don't. You can try it. If you do and it works, please let me know. I'd be very interested to try it out. But I don't think more than 3, and I think probably 1 or 2 is the right number most of the time. And the reason being, I sort of mentioned the Stormwall situation, but at a certain point, your opponent probably will just stop putting out their upkeeps. And I think you kind of want to have the right number to sort of make them want to still put their upkeeps out but be punished for it, or really like think about doing it, but then you have other things in your list that can really take advantage if they don't put their upkeeps out, right? Like things like Megalith and a Pureblood become significantly better if I don't have to waste resources on Wraithbane going into stuff. There's also some casters where they just, like, their whole thing is gone. I'll use a Circle example, right? Chromac 1, his, like, one of the biggest strategies he has is Warpath. That's how he's going to out-threaten you. So he kind of can't not cast it. But if he has it out there, you're going to dump a bunch of boosted shots into him. And even if it doesn't kill him, he's going to have to transfer a lot of damage. Not the place that player wants to be, right? Haley now has an upkeep she may have on herself. May not want to have that there. And there's a handful of casters that really rely on, that you wouldn't expect, that do rely on having self spells. Lilith 3 needs it, and they have magic guns, so like things like Windwall and Lilith 3 aren't going to stop them. But again, is she going to cast Escort or Battle Host, I guess, or not? Like, not seems good for you too, right? You don't, if I can deny Legion Beast being even faster, that's great. And if she decides like, nope, the armor is going to be fine, well, then here's some Woldwyrds. Have fun. I'm not positive that that's a fantastic plan, but I don't think it's a bad one. We'll have to see. Anyways, that's probably enough on the Woldwyrd. Try it out. As I keep playing it, I will try to return to sort of give you an update, but I've really liked it so far. Yep. Zadesh 2, my chat room is telling me, is another example of a caster. I mean, he has the countercharge spell, and a big part of his plan is you come into the clouds, I get you, and if you don't come into the clouds, great, I come across the table. So now you come into the clouds and shoot his caster if he can't get quite to a countercharge place. So that may not be where he wants to be. And we have a World Theme Force coming, so maybe they'll be, we'll see how they're featured in that as well. And then I just want to touch on real quick, and I think the benefits of the theme actually did make it out there, but I do want to talk real quick, go back through the Devourer's host since that kind of got lost to the ether. I'll just go over the benefits real quick. You can take all Circle Warlocks, all living non-character heavies, all living non-character war beasts, Getorix, all Tharn model / units, the Death Wolves, Shifting Stone units, Gallows Grove solos, and Lord of the Feast. And the benefits are, for every full 20 points of Tharn models / solos, you can add 1 command attachment or small or medium base Tharn solo to the army for free. If war beasts in the army gain snacking, and for every full 10 points in this army, you can give 1 corpse token with Heart Eater, 1 corpse token to a model with Heart Eater after deployment has happened. And what I kind of talked about there is I think there's two pretty distinct directions to go with this, and I think in either case you're going to want to really take a look at the Death Wolves being in the list you play. I know a couple people have been testing already and giving those guys 2 corpse tokens each to start the game, or even 1 to 2 depending on how many points you can get in your list, makes them nigh unkillable. They're 14/14s with Prowl, 5 boxes, and 2 corpse tokens effectively means you need 3 attacks to kill one of them. They cost 9 points. That's great. It sort of explains maybe why they don't start with the corpse anymore, as they probably played this theme that way and went, let's make them at least make some decisions as to whether or not they want this. And of course, if your opponent brings any troops themselves, then you can get more corpses. You're also going to be able to get some boosted damages in there and things like that. So I've sort of theorized and I've sort of seen this played out. There's kind of there's really 3 directions you could go. And in my opinion, it's sort of like, which part are you focusing most on? So the beginning of it is, I'm going to focus on snacking because I've already got this pretty War Beast heavy list, and I think I can get away without having the things that aren't in this list. So like an Una 2 could do this, for example, where you're mostly War Beasts and you cut your Sentry Stones and do things like Tharn. So in that case, you give snacking to your beast, which there are some lists, say High Reclaimer and Protector, that just do not want to see that level of remove from play. Testament of Menoth is another one. Don't want to see that at all. Not to mention being able to heal beasts can be really strong, especially less so probably from like Una Scarsfells, but maybe more so from like Baldur 2 might want to do something like that, because now you've got like your heavily armored purebloods, Getterics, Ferals, etc., and they're able to heal. You can use like Shifting Stones and then healing, and then you've got the armor and the wall, and you can't do wrong on Snapshot then, so that's a trade-off. But you may find something like that works well for you. So that's sort of one. I think that's sort of the least applicable, but not to be forgotten. The next direction you could go is what I would call full Tharn, and by that I mean like Tharn Ravagers. So you go Tharn Ravagers max plus command attachment. You get a free shaman, and then you do that again, and then you look at your points and you go, oh, okay, well, I'm at like 42, and you try to get yourself at least up to 60 so that you can get more corpses, but and then you may put the Death Wolves with that, or you might be able to get away with not doing it, but pardon me. But you can go that route. I know one prominent player has been suggesting that, and he found some success with it in some trial matches that he played. I haven't tried it. I do think that there is something to it. I think if you could keep a couple Ravagers in the back safe, giving them corpses would be really strong, especially with the debuff caster, where you could go from a charge gives you a boosted POW 13, but then if you can buy and boost damage again, now that one Ravager is really the value of 2 in one package, and that might get you somewhere. And not to mention just like while 13-15 Tree Walker, tough 5 wounds and no knockdown I know that sounds like a lot of stuff. It's not that survivable, but when there's that many of them, and you've got vengeance triggers to deal with and a few other things, like it sounds like there's something there. The preliminary reports are that there is something, but you need to sort of maximize that threshold. I don't know if you put like 1 unit of Ravagers, if that's quite going to do it. The third approach is the no Ravagers approach, really, because it does say Tharn, so that includes Blood Trackers, Blood Weavers, Night Witches, Wolf Rider solos, and another player I know has been discussing sort of that build. In that build, they're definitely focusing on like, I'm going to put the Death Wolves in, and I'm going to get to 40 years, somewhere between 40 and 60 points worth of Tharn. I'm going to give them 5 or 6 corpses, and I'm going to get value out of my Death Wolves while also combining that with some casters that can support it. Off the top of my head, I think you're looking at like Baldur 1, Tanith, maybe, Morvana 2, maybe. it's just somebody who's going to support bringing a lot of infantry and bringing a lot of Tharn infantry, because if this was Wolfsword and we were talking about Grail would be great, but I do think there's something to that as well. I like the idea of that. I think Baldur 1 probably sticks out to me as the strongest because he's got a damage buff that he can throw out there. You can take Gallows Groves too, so he might actually be a caster that wants to do that, sort of, so that you can, he can be on one side of the table and can cast Stone Skin to the unit that needs to, and if he needs to cycle it to a farther unit, you sort of keep the Gallows Grove over with them, but back, and that can kind of help out there. His feat's strong for really any of the Tharn. The no knockdown's strong. The no blast damage is really strong. So that's definitely something that I may try to mess around with myself as well. I do have all the pieces of that to try to play, and I like it. I'll be really happy if the Ravagers do get some prominence from this, even if I don't get a chance to play them. But those are sort of just what I see list-wise as being the thing. And I'll be really interested to sort of hear feedback on if it's enough, because I know, and if you go back to my Male Tharn episode, I talked a lot about how I felt like those models were close, but just like needed a little something, and maybe this is the little something, or maybe it's sort of like the Woldwyrd into Mark III, where it got its little something, and if it just gets just a little more, it's going to turn that up into being another competitive option, like very, very, very competitive option for Circle. But I don't know. We will see. At this point, we've gone about our usual 45-ish minutes. Seems like I haven't really been keeping track if YouTube is telling me that I'm doing well. Stream status good, excellent. Chat's been good. I'm told that my voice is stronger this way, so that's great. I think we may be sticking with this then. Hopefully this does better for archiving my video as well. Maybe cut out a step in there. I know somebody did ask me about audio. At this time, I'm still not, I still haven't been recording an audio only or finding a way to upload that. I do have access to Muse, so I could probably just do it through their site when I get to it, but for now we're just going to stick with YouTube. Something to consider, you can always run YouTube in the background on your phone too and just do audio. I have done that. Not ideal. Just me making up excuses, but something to keep in mind. I don't really have any more models or units prepared, so I think we'll probably start wrapping up. But next week I will hopefully be back again. I will have to look through my magical list of what I have and haven't talked about, because it's been a lot. I was trying to do images over there-ish for everything I talked about, but it's I just don't have all of them right now, and I haven't had time to do it. So maybe I'll try to do that. I may at some point, I'd really like to also do something where I go live maybe and actually set up some scenarios or maybe live games or things, so we can talk about a few strategies if I come up with something that's worth doing. Since it's on video, I have a lot of podcasts, they talk about strategy, but you can't really see what I'm talking about on the table. So and I think that's something missing from the game a little bit, is people are a little bit too much in the theory and the list crafting and sort of the rules portion of stuff, without actually putting it on the table, because there are definitely pieces that you're like, oh, this is too many points, or it just seems bad, and then you play it and you may see that it's differently, or you may see how with certain lists, and once you get them on the table, once you get into positions, it works. So I may try to do some of that as I kind of work out some theories. I kind of want something that's interesting to talk about, not just sort of like, oh, we all know that. In any case, I'd absolutely like to thank everybody who tuned in live. I had a couple here, it looks like, at the very least, and maybe more who are being quiet and hiding. I don't know. I will try to do that, Brian. But yeah, I would like to thank everybody for tuning in. Hopefully this will go and just be posted to my site. I have to figure out how to exactly, or to my YouTube channel permanently, so you'll be able to get it there. If this keeps being successful, we may just drop Twitch for now. Sorry guys, if you like Twitch better. Quick thank a couple people. As always, Griffin's Roost Painting. You see them over there. My wife's painting company, which does fantastic high-end quality or display quality miniature painting. Any of the models that you've seen on the channel, she has painted. If you've seen me at a tournament with painted things, she painted them. If they look like there's just colors on them, that was me painting in the lines very poorly. I have some beautiful models. I've shown off the Una. Preliminary work has started on a Storm Raptor in between some other commissions, so I would love to show you guys that when it's done, and I will, whether you want me to or not, because I'm going to love it. And of course, also just a quick shout out to Muse, museonminis.com. They help keep me, they let me post the video and get some more attention to the channel via their site, and they didn't have to do that. I'd like to thank them for doing so. As always, if you have any questions for me, Cheddar Caveman at any bit of social media you can think of. And until then, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.